On the 6th of May, 2023, a queen walked into Westminster Abbey to be crowned in someone else's crown. Not remade, not redesigned into something new for the occasion. The actual crown Queen Mary wore in 1911, pulled out of storage after more than a century, reset, and placed on Camilla's head instead. It was the first time in almost 300 years that a British consort hadn't been given a crown of her own. Somewhere in that decision was a very old family argument about diamonds. There was also an Indian government that has never stopped asking for one particular stone back. And underneath both of those sat a queen who, it turns out, had strong feelings about wearing things that already had history in them. Everyone had a theory: family diplomacy, the India question, personal sentiment. Jewellery barely came up in most of them. Thank you for spending part of your day with us. The comments on these videos genuinely shape what we dig into next, so keep sending them. If royal jewellery history is your thing, subscribing and switching on notifications means you'll catch the next one the moment it goes up. Today, we're going through Camilla's entire collection, piece by piece. Queen Camilla's crown. Look closely and the crown itself is almost modest. A silver frame lined with gold, holding around 2,200 diamonds, most of them small brilliant cuts set into tight geometric bands. Gerard made it in 1911 for Queen Mary's coronation as consort to George V. And she wore it afterward in circlet form for decades. It had been sitting quietly among the crown jewels ever since. For Camilla, it came back out, and it came back changed. Workers set 3 diamonds into it, all 3 cut from the same 3,106-carat rough stone pulled out of a South African mine in 1907. The pear-shaped Cullinan III, at 94.4 carats, in the top cross. The cushion-cut Cullinan IV, 63.6 carats, in the band, and the heart-shaped Cullinan V, 18.8 carats, set into the front cross. Exactly where a rock crystal replica of the Koh-i-Noor used to sit. Buckingham Palace announced the reuse in February 2023, months before anyone had seen the finished crown. The last time a consort had worn an existing crown rather than a new one was Queen Caroline, borrowing Mary of Modena's crown, back in the 18th century. The palace called it a matter of sustainability. Workers removed 4 of the crown's 8 detachable arches and fitted a new purple velvet cap underneath. Leaving out the Koh-i-Noor sidestepped a decades-old ownership dispute with India, a diamond that country has formally asked Britain to return more than once. It didn't satisfy everyone, though. Critics pointed out that the Cullinans replacing it were themselves mined in South Africa during the same colonial period. Danielle Kinsey, a historian at Carleton University, put it to reporters at the time roughly like this: swapping one colonial-era stone for 3 others wasn't really avoiding the history. It just moved the conversation somewhere slightly less uncomfortable. Choosing the Cullinans wasn't only about optics, though. Elizabeth II had worn all 3 stones for decades as brooches, ones she nicknamed Granny's Chips. And setting them into Camilla's crown was a direct, personal nod to her. It was worn exactly once, Westminster Abbey, the 6th of May, 2023, and hasn't been out since. Then, sometime in January 2025, on a date nobody bothered to record, it quietly picked up a new name in a Royal Collection Trust website update: Queen Camilla's crown. The change wasn't widely noticed until the coronation's second anniversary that May. The coronation necklace and the George IV state diadem. Around her neck that same day sat something with an even longer resume. Gerard made the coronation necklace in 1858 for Queen Victoria, after an earlier necklace was lost in a legal dispute with the Hanoverian royal family. 25 graduated diamonds, taken from badges and sword hilts already sitting in the royal collection, hold a detachable pendant, the Lahore diamond, 22.48 carats, seized from the Lahore treasury and handed to Victoria by the East India Company in 1851. Every coronation since has featured it. Alexandra wore it in 1902, Mary in 1911, the Queen Mother in 1937, Elizabeth II in 1953. Camilla wore it in 2023, and it became the visual centerpiece of what was otherwise a deliberately understated look. She skipped the matching 1858 earrings, whose diamonds trace back to the Koh-i-Noor's very first royal setting, since her ears aren't pierced, and wore her own diamond drops instead. The diadem she's since paired it with dates back further still. Rundell, Bridge and Rundell made the George IV state diadem in 1820 for George IV coronation procession. 1,333 diamonds, a 4-carat pale yellow stone set in the front cross, a band of pearls, and national emblems worked into the design: rose, thistle, shamrock. Every queen since Adelaide has worn it. Victoria, Alexandra, Mary, the Queen Mother, Elizabeth II. Camilla first wore it at the state opening of Parliament on the 7th of November, 2023, paired with the coronation necklace, and again in July 2024, and again in 2026. Both pieces are Crown property, held in trust rather than personally owned. Camilla doesn't get to keep either one. She borrows them, the same way every consort before her has. Most people have seen it more than they realize. It's the diadem on every British postage stamp, sitting on Elizabeth II's head. The Greville tiara and the Greville festoon necklace. None of this next piece was ever supposed to belong to the royal family at all. Dame Margaret Greville was the daughter of a Scottish brewing magnate, not an aristocrat by birth, who married into money and then spent decades turning her country house into one of the most sought-after invitations in England. Prime ministers, foreign royals, and eventually a young Duke and Duchess of York all passed through her table at Polesden Lacey. She commissioned a honeycomb-patterned diamond tiara from Boucheron in 1921, designed by Lucien Hertz, brilliant cut diamonds set in a lozenge lattice with mill-grain pave, a large marquise diamond anchoring the center top, much of it reusing diamonds from an earlier 1901 Boucheron tiara she already owned. When Greville died in 1942, she left her entire jewellery collection, more than 60 pieces, by most estimates, made by houses like Cartier and Boucheron, not to any relative, but to Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, whom she befriended late in life. It passed to Elizabeth II in 2002, who loaned it on to Camilla. It's now, by a wide margin, the tiara Camilla wears most. She first wore it as Duchess of Cornwall in 2006, then at the Commonwealth Heads of Government banquet in Uganda in November 2007, paired with its matching necklace. Then at the state opening in 2019. Then, most pointedly, at her first state banquet as Queen, in Germany, on the 29th of March, 2023, the eve of the anniversary of the Queen Mother's death. The festoon necklace that so often accompanies it is its own small saga. Cartier built the bottom two strands in 1929, using diamonds Greville already owned. 3 more strands, plus a redesigned clasp, were added in 1938. The Queen Mother typically wore just the shorter 3-strand section. Elizabeth II inherited the full 5-strand piece in 2002 and, as far as anyone can tell, never once wore it in public. Camilla does, the complete 5 rows, in Uganda alongside the tiara, at a dinner marking the Waterloo Bicentenary in 2015, and at a concert for Charles's 70th birthday in 2018. Nobody in the family has ever explained why this is the one she reaches for most, not to reporters, not in any official statement. She just keeps putting it on. The Greville Emerald Kokoshnik. At the center of this one sits a cabochon emerald weighing 93.70 carats, large enough that it barely looks real on camera. Brochuron built the tiara in 1919, again for Margaret Greville herself. Brilliant and rose-cut diamonds pave set in platinum, 6 smaller emeralds flanking each side of that enormous central stone. It came to the Queen Mother in the same 1942 bequest as the honeycomb tiara, then passed down to Elizabeth II. Its most famous moment, for years, had nothing to do with Camilla. Elizabeth II lent it to Princess Eugenie for her wedding in 2018. And according to several accounts from around that time, it was also the tiara Meghan Markle had hoped to wear for her own wedding earlier that same year. She didn't get it. Joanna Wiganowska, a gemologist who studied the piece, put its value somewhere upward of £5 million, possibly closer to 10. A separate valuation came in around $12.2 million, with the appraiser calling it the single most valuable tiara in the family's entire collection. Camilla wore it for the first time at a diplomatic corps reception at Windsor Castle on the 18th of November, 2025, a genuine surprise, since nobody had seen her in it before, and photographers who'd covered the royal family for decades reportedly hadn't expected to see this particular tiara out of the vault again. Under the reception's chandeliers, that single emerald outweighed practically every other stone in the room combined. The wedding history attached to the piece meant it drew far more attention than an ordinary tiara debut usually does. The tiara Meghan reportedly wanted in 2018 finally had its moment in front of the cameras 7 years later, on someone else's head entirely. The Cubit Shand tiara and Camilla's engagement ring. Not everything in Camilla's collection comes from the vault. This tiara never did. A diamond floral spray rising from a bandeau of smaller flowers and leaves, it originally belonged to Camilla's grandmother, Sonia Keppel-Cubitt. Daughter, in one of those small ironies royal history keeps producing, of Alice Keppel, who had been mistress to Edward VII decades earlier. Sonia's husband, Roland Cubitt, gave it to her. It passed down to Camilla's mother, Rosalind Shand, and eventually to Camilla herself. Sources differ on exactly when. Some say she inherited it when her grandmother Sonia died in 1986. Others place it after her mother Rosalind's death in 1994. She wore it at her own 1973 wedding to Andrew Parker Bowles, loaned to her that day by her grandmother. She lent it in turn to her daughter, Laura Lopez, for her 2006 wedding. She wore it herself again at the Royal Academy's annual dinner in 2015. She did not wear it at her 2005 wedding to Charles. Protocol generally discourages a tiara for a second marriage, and she didn't push the point. Her engagement ring has a stranger provenance. It's an Art Deco emerald-cut diamond dating to the 1920s, 5 carats flanked by 3 baguette diamonds on each side by most accounts, though other records describe it as closer to 8 carats with 6 baguettes, and the two figures have never quite been reconciled. It came from the personal collection of the Queen Mother, who died in 2002, not her own engagement ring, which had been a sapphire, but a piece Charles selected specifically as a family heirloom rather than commissioning something new. It debuted at their engagement party at Windsor Castle on the 10th of February, 2005. At the wedding itself, a civil ceremony at the Guildhall that April, they exchanged plain Welsh gold bands made by Wartski. She wore the ring again on her left hand at the coronation in 2023, 18 years and 1 crown later. No inventory number will ever attach to it. It passed through 3 women in her own family before it reached her, and not one of them was royal by birth. The Belgian Sapphire Tiara and Suite. The stones themselves started life as a necklace belonging to Princess Louise of Belgium, daughter of Leopold II, sometime in the mid-1800s. In 1947, George VI gave a sapphire necklace and matching earrings to his daughter Princess Elizabeth as a wedding gift. A bracelet was added in the 1960s. Elizabeth II later bought a related Belgian sapphire necklace in 1963 and had its stones mounted onto a tiara frame to complete the set. Large sapphires ringed in diamonds, the central stone angled so it catches light like a diamond rather than a sapphire. This was Camilla's first tiara appearance as Queen, at a state banquet for South Africa's president at Buckingham Palace on the 22nd of November, 2022. She wore the necklace and bracelet without the tiara for a banquet at the Palace of Versailles during the France state visit in September 2023, then the complete suite, tiara included, for a French state banquet at Windsor in July 2025. She wore it again for the Nigerian state banquet in March 2026, and again for the state visit banquet honoring Donald Trump in September 2025. The Burmese Ruby Tiara. 96 rubies, arranged in Tudor rose motifs among diamonds recycled from the dismantled Nizam of Hyderabad tiara. Gerard built it in 1973 at Elizabeth II's request, using rubies that had originally arrived in Britain in 1947 as a wedding gift from the people of Burma. 96 of them, according to tradition, because that number was believed to protect the wearer from 96 diseases. One recent valuation put the finished tiara at roughly £7 million, the highest figure attached to any piece in Camilla's regular rotation. Only 2 women have ever worn it in public: Elizabeth II, who commissioned it, and Camilla, who inherited it through Charles in 2022. Camilla debuted it at the South Korean state banquet at Buckingham Palace in November 2023, paired with Queen Victoria's crown ruby necklace, and wore it again for the Japanese state banquet on the 25th of June, 2024, that time with the King George VI festoon necklace. 96 rubies, meant to guard against 96 diseases. That number has only ever sat on 2 heads, Elizabeth II, and now Camilla's. Queen Alexandra's Kokoshnik tiara. In 1888, 365 women, peeresses of the realm, one theory goes, a number chosen to echo the days of a year, pooled their money and had Gerard build a diamond halo tiara as a silver wedding anniversary gift for Princess Alexandra. 488 diamonds, give or take, set in a fringe shape borrowed from Russian court fashion of the period, though the piece itself has no Russian ownership behind it at all. Queen Mary inherited it in 1925, Elizabeth II in 1953, who wore it more than almost any other tiara she owned across her 70-year reign. Camilla wore it for the first time at a state banquet for Qatar's Emir at Buckingham Palace on the 3rd of December, 2024, its first major public outing since Elizabeth II's death 2 years earlier. Camilla is only the 4th woman to wear it since 1888, after Alexandra, Mary, and Elizabeth II, all 3 now gone. The Delhi Durbar tiara. Gerard made this one for Queen Mary in 1911, for the Delhi Durbar, the grand ceremonial assembly held in India to mark George V's succession, staged with an extravagance that dwarfed most European coronations of the era, complete with elephant processions and tens of thousands of spectators. Mary needed a tiara built specifically for the climate and the occasion, distinct from anything she'd worn in Britain. A diamond frieze of lyres and forget-me-not leaves, it originally held a set of Cambridge emeralds along with 2 Cullinan diamonds, the 3 and the 4. George V reportedly called it May's best tiara, using his private nickname for his wife. There's a separate Delhi Durbar necklace, set with different Cambridge emeralds and the Cullinan 7, that was one of Elizabeth II's own favourites, but there's no verified record of Camilla ever wearing that particular piece, so we won't pretend otherwise. The tiara itself came to the Queen Mother in 1953 and returned to Elizabeth II collection after her death in 2002. Camilla wore it exactly once, at a state banquet for the King and Queen of Norway at Buckingham Palace in October 2005, only its 3rd public outing ever, and its first since 1947. Those 2 Cullinan diamonds that were pulled from this tiara decades ago didn't stay lost. Worn for years afterward as Elizabeth II's favorite brooches, they're the exact same stones sitting in Camilla's coronation crown right now. Diana's brooch and the jewels nobody expected Camilla to wear. A cabochon teardrop emerald, roughly 3 carats, hangs from an oval frame of 18 small diamonds. It's an 1860s crown jewels piece with a complicated recent history. In 1981, the Queen Mother gave it, then still a necklace, to Diana as a wedding gift. Diana wore it that way twice, once in Vienna in 1986, once in Toronto, and after her death in 1997, it returned quietly to the royal collection, where it sat for over a decade. Camilla eventually had it remade into a brooch, worth an estimated $133,000 to $137,000 in its current form. She's worn it at Cheltenham Festival in 2012, and most conspicuously at a 2019 reception marking Charles's 50th anniversary as Prince of Wales, an event thick with royal photographers, where the choice of jewellery was never going to go unnoticed. Reaction online split roughly in two. Some called it tasteless, arguing that a piece so publicly tied to Diana should have gone to William or Harry's side of the family instead, or stayed in storage out of respect. Others pointed out, correctly, that the brooch was never Diana's personal property to begin with. It's crown property, on loan to whichever queen happens to be wearing it at the time, exactly like the diadem or the sapphire suite, and Diana herself only ever held it the same way Camilla does now. A handful of other brooches round out her rotation. Prince Albert's brooch, a large central sapphire ringed by 12 diamonds, which Albert gave Victoria in 1840. And which later inspired the design of Diana's own engagement ring. The Greville ivy leaf clips, Cartier pieces from the same 1942 bequest, worn by Elizabeth II at the day her father died and by Camilla during a welcome ceremony for Nigeria's state visit in March 2026. A Tudor crown-shaped brooch that debuted in February 2023. A sapphire cluster brooch first worn on Commonwealth Day, the 13th of March, 2023. Kate wore the same brooch last September. Whatever the online reaction says, the family itself doesn't seem to treat it as off-limits. Camilla could commission anything she wanted: new stones, new settings, a jeweler on permanent call. Instead, she keeps reaching for pieces that belong to women she actually knew. The Queen Mother, who was close to her for years before Camilla ever became queen herself, and Elizabeth II, who trusted her with a lifetime's worth of tiaras. Even her own grandmother's flowers are still doing rounds. She lends them out for family weddings to this day. Her newer, unremarkable pieces stay personal too, rather than bought new for show. There's a turquoise necklace from her own family that she wore on the Italy state visit in 2025. An aquamarine set she'd owned for 15 years before anyone bothered to photograph it. And a diamond serpent necklace that's simply hers. No provenance chain, no bequest, nobody else's name on it. There's probably another tiara debut coming. There usually is. But so far, almost nothing Camilla wears arrives without someone else's name already attached to it first.